Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our panel discussion on energy security amid shifting geopolitics. Never a dull moment these days, huh, gentlemen? As you heard, my name is Julia Neshwat, and it's such a privilege to be here with you all today to moderate what promises to be, I believe, a timely and thought-provoking conversation. As you all know, global energy security is once again a flashpoint in geopolitical competition. From Russia targeting of Ukraine's energy infrastructure to instability in the Middle East, disrupting shipping routes in the Red Sea, we're witnessing profound volatility in oil and gas markets. These disruptions expose the fragility of global energy flows and remind us how deeply energy underpins economic stability and national security. Here in North America, efforts to bolster energy resilience face headwinds, political fragmentation, as well as regulatory uncertainty, and, of course, growing concerns over Chinese influence in critical supply chains and infrastructure. And then, meanwhile, you have China's dominance in critical mineral processing, as well as clean energy manufacturing, coupled with surging electricity demand and expanding grid interconnections. All of this reshaping how we think about strategic dependence, diversification, and, of course, ultimately, reliability. Today, we're here to grapple a central question. How should governments and industries recalibrate their energy security strategies in this new global context? What tools, whether it's policy, technology, or partnerships, can protect energy flows, or look at this from an era of geopolitical friction? So our distinguished panelists here today will bring diverse expertise to unpack these challenges and also chart a path forward. We'll explore how to balance energy resilience with economic prosperity, navigate the clean energy path amid the supply chain vulnerabilities, as well as safeguard critical infrastructure, both from a physical as well as economic threat standpoint. So let's dive into this conversation, starting with introductions of our panelists. Again, thank you all for being here. First, I'd like to introduce Teofil Muresan. He is the CEO and founder of E-Infra Group. Mr. Muresan consolidated E-Infra in 2007, founding Direct One, if I'm not mistaken, the company with the longest neutral fiber optic network in Romania, Nova Power and Gas, a supplier and distributor of electricity and gas, and in 2010 founded WeSee, a service company for wind energy sector. And sorry, we're not in exact order here, but that's all right, we'll make it work. We also have Osama Mubaraz. Mr. Mubaraz has 30 years of experience in the oil and gas industry. He is currently the Secretary General of the East Mediterranean Gas Forum. Also, during his career, he supported key policy developments and reform in Egypt's petroleum sector. We also have with us today, in the second seat here, the Honorable Mark Menezes. Mr. Menezes is a nationally recognized energy attorney. He is a former Deputy Secretary of the U.S. Department of Energy, a former Undersecretary of Energy, and an executive at Berkshire Hathaway Energy Group. Welcome. And finally, at the very end, we have Ambassador Peter Haas. Ambassador Haas is a strategic advisor at Accelerate Energy, a leading provider of flexible energy, LNG solutions. He has 30 years of a distinguished experience in the U.S. Foreign Service, most recently, I believe, serving as ambassador to Bangladesh. Great. Well, welcome all of each and every one of you here today. So let's get to it. I want to first begin with the theme of infrastructure and energy security overall. So let me turn first to Ambassador Haas and then Mr. Muresan, if I may. What role should liquefied natural gas, floating storage and regasification units, SMR, small modular reactors, as well as grid interconnections, play in adapting rapidly to energy disruptions? For example, I know, Mr. Muresan, you could also certainly discuss the significance of planned projects such as the Black Sea, North Sea power corridor linking Romania to Northern Europe. So with that, let me maybe start with you, Mr. Muresan, and then Ambassador Haas, if you may. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be speaker here with Atlantic Council event. It's the first time as a speaker in US. Thank you so much. A great event, congratulations. My company, in fact, group of company, Infra, is involved in building, operating critical infrastructure in energy, telecom, and civil. We are involved in two important big projects in Romania. One of them is implementing the first SMR nuclear power plant with NuScale technology in Romania. Now we are in the stage of implementing the project. We started 3 years ago, and now we are in the phase of FEED 2. Till the beginning of next year, we'll finish this stage, and we maybe continue to be the most advanced SMR power plant in EU and maybe in Europe. And the second project where my group of companies are involved, it's also in new technology, in building a high voltage DC line from the Black Sea through Romania, connecting Hungary and the rest of Europe till the North Sea. This technology is a quite new one, is used especially for the subsea cable, subsea connection, but we are using in a very new situation on the gas pipeline corridor, using the same corridor which is used for the BRUA corridor, Bulgaria, Romania, which offer a huge advantage. So when we are talking about the energy security in the region, in the areas close to conflicts or during the conflicts, it's maybe more difficult. Because if you are talking like in general about the resilience and affordability of the energy, you have to make decisions very fast. Almost overnight, Romania and other countries around Ukraine had to supply Moldavia, Ukraine with part of natural gas and the power. So we had to move very fast to invest in all kinds of the generation power. We accelerate to build the gas power plant, more than 2 gigawatts under construction in Romania gas power plant. We have the biggest onshore wind farm. We started to build offshore wind farm, but we had to move also with new technologies. Having experience in nuclear with the existing technology, nuclear classic technology, I would say, our government partnering with the US authorities, and I would like to say thank you to US, to administration, to Department of Energy, and to American companies, NuScale, Fluor, and other companies. They helped to move very fast. So that we can say now the security in energy in the area Balkans and Eastern Europe is maybe very important to make very fast decisions in new technology or in existing technology.
Great. Ambassador Haas.
Great. Thank you very much, Julia. Thank you to the Atlantic Council for having me here. Accelerate Energy, as you said, provides flexible LNG solutions. But to us, what that means is we deliver energy security in a variety of places all around the world. And we're talking about supply disruptions currently, both because of Russia and also what's happening in the Middle East, and that's obviously a focus. It's something that we have great experience in. So after the Russians cut off the gas to Finland, after Finland decided it wanted to join NATO, they were left in a difficult position. Within 10 months, we had a floating storage and regasification unit there delivering energy. And it not only replaced the energy they had lost from Russia, but also when the pipeline went down and when the wind stopped blowing, we were able to supply LNG to the market to keep the economy going. We've replicated that in Germany, where we have a floating storage and regasification unit. But we're also the world's largest owner, provider, operator of these vessels, and we provide energy security in other contexts as well. There's been relatively little talk during this conference about the global south or the developing world. But that's some of our key markets. In Bangladesh, we provide about 40% of their natural gas through our FSRUs. In Pakistan, about 25%. And without this, they wouldn't even have the energy security to provide baseload power to keep their economies going. And because of the flexibility of our vessels, we can get there much quicker and much cheaper than it would cost for them to build a land-based LNG terminal. But we're also about the energy security involved in the transition to cleaner fuels. We're in Brazil, 70–80% of their power is renewable. But if it doesn't rain, they don't have power. And so we're there to provide them with what they need for intermittency. And so we view this whole notion of energy security very, very broadly. And our most recent acquisition is in Jamaica, where we just bought $1 billion of assets. And one of the things we would like to do with that is use it to create a regional hub to provide LNG throughout the Caribbean to help them solve their energy security needs.
Great, thank you so much. Turning to what's happening right now in the world, as you can imagine, regional leverage in this fragmented world. Let me turn to Mr. Mubarak as well as Mr. Menez. How can regional energy hubs, so to speak, contribute to this global energy security and try to foster cooperation in some way or another when we think about some of this fractured landscape today? Maybe I'll start with you, Mr. Mubarak.
Thank you, Julia, and thank you for the Atlantic Council. It's great to be here among this distinguished panel. And I think it's a very interesting question, especially nowadays. And maybe what I would like to highlight is the East Mediterranean Gas Forum and how it was established and what we're trying to do. And the whole idea of the East Mediterranean Gas Forum we saw that there are a lot of gas discoveries in the Eastern Mediterranean, in addition to a lot of potential for more gas discoveries, but to several challenges, they are not monetized, they are not developed. So the idea was, how can we bring together the different stakeholders from the governments and the companies to work together and to collaborate to develop these resources, monetize them, create value, and share this value. And while doing so, how can we have a more integrated energy system? And through integration and economic collaboration, we believe that we can create a narrative or a success story that can withstand some of the political tensions, especially in a region like the Eastern Mediterranean, which is very geopolitically sensitive. And our member countries, among our member countries, we have Israel and Palestine sitting together, not discussing politics, but discussing economic collaboration and energy collaboration. And we believe that through this integration, we can withstand some of the political tensions. And we have successful examples. Gas is flowing from Israel to Egypt, some of it through Jordan, some of this gas is re-exported to Europe, so it's win-win for everyone. And we definitely can replicate these examples.
Mark.
Hello again. Julia, thank you for having. I'd like to thank the Atlantic Council really for the invitation. It really is a pleasure to be here. And listening to my fellow panelists and the questions, I'd just like to add a few things in discussion. I agree with everything that the other panelists have said. I'm Mark Menzies. I'm President and CEO of the United States Energy Association. And our organization really is over 100 years old. It was put together as a member of the World Energy Congress. And the World Energy Congress came about because over 100 years ago, there was the discovery and development of a lot of sources of petroleum and natural gas. And the global economy generally was powered by coal back then. And so the expectation was that countries had to be able to have access to this very efficient and new fuel that was going to drive economies and national security. And I'm reading articles here about steel, natural gas has talked about the transition fuel, and that may be. However, it's interesting to note that while we've been working 100 years to try to essentially move past coal, last year the world used more coal at any point in the history of the world. Use more oil and natural gas, use more renewables. But the point being that we are having an ever-increasing demand for energy. Peter mentioned the global south. I mean, that's important that we do. So USEA has also been involved in some of these regional issues, that we've talked about, specifically with respect to, Eastern Europe. USEA was in Eastern Europe for decades, trying to get independence from, frankly, Russia and the former Soviet Union countries. Bring private industry in to invest in electricity infrastructure, natural gas infrastructure. Again, the goal was to increase not only supply, but suppliers into the region to give choice. And that has been going on for decades. We were there. We were able to help with the disconnection from the Ukrainian electric system from Russia right before the invasion. So this concept of working regionally is an important concept, and it has shown to be true in the past. With respect to the natural gas in the region, it's also important to be able to continue the work that has been done by the East Med Task Force, as well as Romania itself, and that is to ensure that natural gas that now can be brought into the East Med area can actually travel up into countries like Romania. And so we have been involved in the interconnector study because there has been some investments in, certainly the TAPS has been completed, the interconnector from Bulgaria, Greece and Bulgaria up, and now we're looking to try to how to open it up, the pathway, in an economic way. Now this is driven, of course, by private interests that need to take an interest in this and drive this. It's important for the region, but as well as you have to include, of course, the government officials too. So that's sort of the way that, we see both private industry and government working together in these regional areas to really try to bring in additional energy for economy and for economic gains and for global security.
Thank you very much. If I can just follow up maybe with Ambassador Haas and you again, Mark. As we think about all this and even bringing it back home to North America, so to speak, is there any type of regional strategy that North American stakeholders can do to really build on that foster of cooperation, if you will, and strengthen, I guess, a sense of resilience here in the home front?
I'm actually going to defer this one to Mark.
Oh, to Mark? Okay.
Did you say North America?
Yes, just looking back to, yes, North America.
Yeah, right. So, you read the morning news, right, and you see what's happening. Instantly you think of Strait of Hormuz, right? You think of, okay, let's see, 40% of natural gas globally comes through that strait, although the U.S. is the leading producer of natural gas, but still we need to look at it globally. 20% of the world's oil, likewise, comes through. Most of this goes to China, in Asia, and the U.S. has stepped up its production, natural gas and oil, again, #1 producer of both in the world. Probably needs to start looking at potential increasing export amounts. Now, that's in context, right, as to what we're potentially facing, here. So to that end, you look to North America. Now, that's the immediate need. Long term, we heard the governor of Alaska talk in terms of this natural gas pipeline coming down, from Alaska. Some of us in this room have been around for decades and have personally worked on efforts with Congress and others to get that pipeline built. Entire careers, in fact, have been spent on almost getting that pipeline built. The pipeline has not yet been built. Now, this may be the time to do this. Now, this is a long-term play, and so when you see things that are happening in the Middle East, and really notwithstanding great strides that had just been made a few years ago, I can remember during the Trump 1, the true excitement and almost disbelief in the creation of the East Med Natural Gas Forum. Okay, the members of this were countries that had essentially declared that we'll never really work with them. And what we witnessed was with the discovery of the new finds by private industry, you could see governments coming together to take advantage of this. And we were really, truly thinking that peace could break out in the region over what? Over increased energy supply and access. So it's very, very important. And then following with the Abraham Accords, believe me, there was plenty of excitement. But U.S. and the North America really, I think, has to be prepared to step up in a real way. And thank goodness that we've had policies in place, certainly with this administration, to remove barriers to increase production, whether it's natural gas or oil. And now that if it's going to be needed, I think we're in a good position to be able to, to do that.
Especially with the regulatory process and hopefully getting through some of the permitting challenges that since they've taken so long. So that's a great point. Great. Well, this is another question I'd say to all four panelists. When we think about what tools are available out there, when you think about the market economies, how we can counter strategic economic influence, if you will, and looking at, we think about the Strait of Hormuz, which we had a discussion earlier about, this market manipulation that's ongoing. Is there anything specific that can be leveraged as we look at this overall and the impact it has on market economies? So if anyone wants to go first.
I would like to share with you from our experience in working with American companies, with American authorities in a very big projects in Romania, but we hope to be in the entire area. So very close with U.S. Embassy in Romania, Romanian Embassy, governments, we started very fast to decide and then to implement the projects. So in terms of gas, there is BRUA, Bulgaria, Romania. Of course, it's connected with Turkey and the rest of the Mediterranean countries. And now, in Romania, it's finished from the border with Bulgaria and the border with Hungary. And this year will be open a new connection from the Black Sea to BRUA. So this kind of corridor from the Black Sea, from the north to the south, from the east to west, are very important to supply Europe with natural gas. This is one. The second is to implement the new technology and to have enough power. I like very much renewables. I like very much batteries, storage in general. But without gas power plants, without nuclear, it's no future for the huge demand in Europe and in the world. We really need to move very fast, like we were forced to do, because we were very close for the conflict. We had to have a strategy yesterday, not today for tomorrow. So the pressure to find also new technology to implement push us to find solution to build the corridor for the power also. And as I mentioned, high voltage DC, interconnectors, not connector between the countries, but crossing the countries, collocated with the metallical pipelines, so that the idea to put together, because it's about the DC, not AC, which is not allowed to be with metallical pipes. We proved, and in the first project in Europe with this collocating, we proved that we can install the high voltage DC cable with a very high capacity. Each of them is 3 gigawatts. The project started with 2 cables from the Black Sea and continued to the North Sea. Germany started to build the Süd link from the North Sea to the south, but on the land, it took 5 years to them to rent or to buy the land. So using the existing corridor is a huge advantage. I can mention also this corridor could be also the best place for the new generation of data centers. Why? Because we have a very high transportation, high voltage DC line, existing AC systems interconnected, and converters between these. To place this data center in the same place with the connectors have enough power, enough huge, because we are talking about the gigawatts connect in both AC and DC, fiber optics, which is needed for the. So the lesson we have learned is sometime when you are pushed to make decisions and to act, give some advantages. But our advantages, it was also to have a strong partner. So I do recommend to our neighbors, to the European country, to look very careful to nuclear technologies. Even it's the classic Romania now, it's investing in the new 2 reactor in the classic technology, but at the same time in the new technology with SMR. SMR are safer, 2 levels safer than the classic, and can balance also the system. It's not only for base load. Sorry so much with technical information.
No, this is great. I mean, diversification of supplies is critical, and nuclear is part of that discussion. Great.
So you asked the question about strategic competition in market economies. I think for me and for Accelerate, it's strategic competition in non-market economies that is the more important question. When we compete in market economies, there's a tender process, we have all of this, there are rules of the road, we compete, and we compete fairly. In parts of the global south, they have rules that allow government-to-government transactions to happen directly with no tender, but if you're involving a business like Accelerate, you have to do an open, competitive tender process. There are lots of places where they go G to G because it's easier. And so it's critical to have the support of the US government, and of course I'll say this as a former ambassador, but it's critical to have the support of the US government when you're out doing deals. And it's critical to have elements and organizations like the Development Finance Corporation, US Trade and Development Agency, Export-Import, bank being there to help you, because you're then able to at least give the flavor of a government-to-government conversation and to receive the halo effect of US financing institutions. And it's also critical, just as policy and our domestic policy is critical to increase the amount of energy exports that we do from the United States, it's critical to have that support overseas to make sure we win the markets where we can deliver it.
Where it's reliable and affordable, hence the definition of energy security. Yes.
So, yeah, maybe the key message is in line with what has been said, is diversification. Diversification of energy resources, sources of supply, and also routes of supply. And this is definitely important to guarantee energy security, which is a concept that has been overlooked for a long time. And it emerges, unfortunately, only with crisis. It emerged with Russia-Ukraine war. It emerged with the war in Gaza and the Middle East, and with the recent crisis. And I think this has to be a concept for the short-term and long-term policies of any government and any market. And I think maybe the situation now is different from other crises, maybe 10, 15 years ago, because of definitely the US position in energy. Before that, the US used to be maybe the major importer of energy. Now it's different. It's a major supplier. And I think, again, I don't want to predict or to forecast anything, but I think any crisis in the Middle East, its impact is definitely, to a great extent, diluted by this concept. So if this would happen 15 years ago, I think things would have been quite different.
Serves as a buffer or barrier. Mark, any thoughts?
I was just sitting here reflecting and listening to Accelerate. Indeed, and our experience is the same. Global South, government to government, it's not always simply going in, not simply, but competing. You get government contracts. So I think that, it's very much important to recognize that you have to be sufficiently flexible to be able to deal with these kinds of situations. And it's sometimes you have to get our own government involved with the other governments to ensure that tenders are fair and that tenders are actually led, and that, in the U.S. we just naturally think of things being, fair and open, that kind of thing. So there's always that. And so companies like Accelerate, need to know that and factor that into their business risks while trying to serve the business South and bringing energy access. And it's very frustrating being in the U.S. in part because we don't have a sovereign fund. President Trump made that quip at one point, and indeed, it's something that you feel when you're in the U.S. government and you're trying to, bring energy projects, around the world, if you will. Well, the U.S., that's not how we do business. It's all private business. And even for projects in the regions of the world that we're talking about for strategic importance, if Accelerate and other companies did not exist, where we and can support their efforts, you're really at a loss to be able to actually get this infrastructure built. And in the area of Eastern Europe, as we were talking about, what we discovered was all economic modeling for any infrastructure went out the window if you factored Gazprom being able to flood the market anytime it wanted. Well, there would be no economic reason for any infrastructure, and that was by design. That's how Gazprom operated. So what we have to overcome, private businesses as well as those that have been in and out in government trying to do this, groups that come together like the East Med, to accomplish what you're undertaking. Again, it's I'm sure the audience can appreciate this, but imagine that undertaking in that region of the world, really to get countries and then working together. So it's hard to understate, the difficulty of talking about this when, most of this is done with private investment, and figuring out that landscape, is not an easy thing to do.
It's certainly, I found with industry, it'll happen quicker. They'll have the on-the-ground experience to get through some of those barriers that could take a while through the bureaucracies of any government, so to speak. So, excellent. I think we have time for one more round, if I may. As we know, with all these unresolved conflicts, such as Russia's war in Ukraine or China's territorial claims on Taiwan, all looming over the future of energy projects, especially when it comes to trade routes. How should states and especially companies as well try to attract that investment, if you will, especially when you're thinking about all these potential geopolitical risks that increase, such as in the Eastern Mediterranean, to try to make the case, if anything, to investors in an age where secure supply is paramount? Let me open it up.
I think it goes back to what we've been talking about, and that's the question of diversification.
Yeah.
Diversification of what you're producing domestically, what you're importing, how you're importing it, and how vulnerable those routes are. If you have a shoreline, which not everyone does, and you're getting all of your gas from a pipeline, you need to think. If you are getting almost all of it from renewable energy, and if you believe the sun is always going to shine and it's always going to rain, and then that's fine. But I think it's the question of diversification and making sure that you have multiple options and that you have an insurance policy. And we sometimes talk about our FSRUs as insurance policies, that they can just sit there off the coast filled with LNG, and if you need it, it's there. And so it's this question of diversification and really thinking through all of the potential risks and then planning infrastructure around it.
My opinion, the main goal when we are talking about energy security to be continuous supplied, resilient, and affordable, of course, have to have a very smart mix in production. Renewables, it's like a pleasant heat. We know a lot about the renewables, but can it be without the gas power plants to match together because they are unpredictable? And of course, with batteries and with nuclear for the forces. If the mix is built with the right technologies, with the proof technologies, so we are happy having American technologies in our projects. This is about generation, and then about the transmission. Without intracontinental and intercontinental routes for the gas, for the power, for the data, we are blocked in producing in different areas, and we cannot exploit really economically the resources. So, in my opinion, diversification, as my colleague mentioned, corridors crossing the continent and between the continents, right technology and right partnerships. We started in Romania with a partnership between Romanian big state companies like Nuclear Electrica, National Grid, with a private company, and then together partnership with the American companies like Fluor, a very old, very strong EPC company, NewScale, the most advanced, in our opinion, in SMR technology in the world, in our opinion, reliable, with a great future. So I think this mix between the technologies and partnership is the key.
Yeah, it takes a champion to take that first leap, and maybe others will follow when it comes to that technology and innovation. Mark?
Yeah, no, I just want to echo that, and I'm glad you mentioned again the SMR. In the world of electricity, small modular reactor technology is really, coming to be. And TEO has the first NuScale SMR, this is a light water reactor, that is under construction and will be the first to operate in the world. Now, this is not an insignificant achievement here. In the world of electricity, while we've been talking about natural gas and oil primarily for transportation and home heating and cooking needs, in the world of electricity, these small modular reactors, this is no small accomplishment here. The reason I feel so excited about it is while at the department, if you're not aware, a significant amount of U.S. taxpayer dollars went to help to develop this technology, and many people spent many hours to build the first NuScale reactor in the state of Idaho. It did not happen. So this is a U.S. technology, U.S. company. The first NuScale SMR will be built in Romania. And that will serve as to get the data for all others. Now, there's other SMR technologies to be sure. There's advanced reactors, and there's a lot of enthusiasm and excitement about that. But that shouldn't be understated here. So in the world of electricity, when you look at today's events that have really taken up a lot of our time talking about energy, the world of electricity, think about a future world, where electricity, natural gas will still play its role in generation, but imagine a greater role for nuclear. And we're not talking about the large reactors, and in many ways we're talking about fuels that will not be highly enriched, so they're low enriched, they're high SA, low enriched, they're triso fuels, and that's the fuel of the future. So I just wanted to sort of foreshadow what the future could be, so whenever we have these panels next time, really natural gas and oil will be talked about there. Electricity might have its own set of issues that we talk about.
Yeah, so I believe if we really want to attract more investments, to produce more energy, to do more energy infrastructure projects, it is key to have extensive engagement between the governments and the industry and the investors. So the governments has a role to play to set the right policies, the regulations, and the investors definitely has a role to play. And in this regard, I believe the EMGF, again, represents a model I believe is successful, because at the EMGF, it's not just the governments. Yes, they have our 8 member countries and observers, but we also have a couple of what we call advisory committees. We have the Gas Industry Advisory Committee that now has 37 members, all operating in the Eastern Mediterranean. They have the IOCs like Exxon, Chevron, BP, Shell, but also they have the service providers. They have the EPC contractors. They have the financing institutes. And recently we have established what we call implementer groups across the value chain of the gas industry that has representatives from these companies, from the governments, and also from the regulators. So I believe this kind of engagement, addressing the concerns, the challenges, discussing projects, this is important if we really want to to fast track the projects that we need.
It's a great point that interactive engagement will be critical. The need for diversification, absolutely. The technology and innovation is certainly there, and having a champion to lead some of that through industry will be certainly critical. So it looks like we're out of time, but I just want to thank each and every one of you and the panelists today. So please give them a warm welcome, or warm applause.